So today we're going to be working on Dawn's van again. This one should be a fairly straightforward one, but a lot of people don't do this job themselves. They take it somewhere and get it done, and it's a relatively easy job. So I thought I'd show you guys how to go about doing it. So Dawn's van, the reason we knew the brakes were going is when they wear down, brake pads have this little tab on them that starts squeaking, and you'll hear like a metal kind of rubbing sound, just a little squeak. If you catch it while it's doing a little squeak, you're in good shape. The rotors will still be good. If you wait and it becomes a grinding noise, that's too late. You're gonna replace the rotors as well. But if you catch it during the squeak, you're in good shape. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna remove this cap. Basically, you're relieving the pressure here. If you look, this is very low. The reason the fluid's low is because the pad has moved out. The pad is wore down, and the cylinder itself is more full. That's where all that fluid goes to. So once I compress that pad, that caliper again, you'll see that it'll fill this thing back up. So right now, I'm basically to the spot where all I did was pull this wheel off. So I jacked the vehicle up, threw a jack stand underneath there for safekeeping, pull the wheel off. Right here is my my rotor, and this here is the caliper. The brake pads I'm changing are right here, and there's one inside. Here you can actually see what these pads look like, and it's not going to be the easiest to see until I get it off, how wore down they are, but I did catch it in time. The way you change this is you compress this, then you undo two bolts, one here and then one here. Now in order to compress this, you need a big C-clamp. Now I warn you, when you put this C-clamp on, you don't want to go over top of the banjo bolt. There's a bolt here that holds the line on. You don't want to go over top of that. Most calipers will have a spot built into it. Like this one here has a spot right there. So I'll just kind of take it right here. All I got to do is collapse that, just slowly. I don't need to crank it a lot. All I want to do is collapse it. And you see how that caliper is moving? Well, it moves on these two sliding bolts up here. I'll show you that when we get there. And it got to the part where it's tight. Now all I got to do is just loosen it up. And you see, this thing can kind of slide in and out now. It slides on these bolts up here. All right, so the nuts that I'm trying to get are this one and this one. So let's bust those loose. You got one here. That wasn't even on there that tight. And you got one right here. There we go. Now sometimes the inner nut will spin. Once you get it broken loose, you should be able to just hold it and get it off. Pull this off. There's the one bolt. Okay. Now you see where we're at. All I'm going to do is pull this caliper off, come straight out, and I normally set it here somewhere so I'm not relying on this line to kind of hold it. What I'm trying to change are these two pads right here. And if you notice, this pad is very thin. This was the one that was probably squeaking. This is the piece that makes it squeak. So when this piece hits the rotor, that's where the squeak comes from. Pull this one out. If you look at these two, the inside wore a little bit more than the outside did, but not by much. Now, your pads, when you get them, they normally come with some shims. They'll come with a shim that's kind of attached here on the back, and then they come with these little shims that go in here. You don't always need to replace those shims. I like to make sure that they're cleaned out. The other thing you want to make sure is that these bolts here can move. If it's stuck in there, you'll see a uneven wear on these pads. In this case, we're not replacing the rotor. If I wanted to take it all the way off, I would have to take these two big 18 millimeters out, and then this bracket would come off. The rotor would come off. Easy peasy. I don't need to do that on this van. As long as there's no grooves, you're in good shape. Now let me show you what I do with the pads. I like to buy wider thermoquiets because they don't make a lot of noise until they're worn out. You get your pads, they already got your things incorporated, and then I'll show you what I do with them. So there's my Wagner thermoquiets. Let's get this thing opened. I'll just cut through some of this plastic. So you'll have two different ones. You'll have one with a tab, and you'll have one without that tab, and they're basically identical other than that. When I just took them off, I noticed that the tab was on the inside, so I'm going to use the tab on the inside. With these, when you touch them and you get grease all in here, you don't want that. So what I like to do with these is I just take a piece of sandpaper, so I'll just kind of scuff off that edge, and that's basically it. That's how I prepare my pads. All right, these clips, you notice you got two different kinds, and they're basically two different directions of the same clip. If you notice there's a tab on the outside, you want to make sure you get the tabs on the outside. So this one will go this way. So let's pull this one out, and then to put it in, so the edge goes in, and then push it down, and that new one's in. Except this one here is the opposite. So this one would be this one, and you stick it in there and you press it down. Simple as that. I'll get the top ones. This one is that one. This one will be this one. We could take our pads and stick them in there. The way I found is easiest is you got to come in kind of at an angle, like that. And same thing with this one here. You stick it in there, just get it in there, get it started, and just flatten it up. And now it's as simple as bolting it back together. Since I can press this caliper, I should be able to get it on there. And yeah, I can get it on there pretty easy. Get one started. Might have to lift that caliper a little bit to get it going. All right, I got one going. Let's get the other one started. Easy peasy. And then it's basically just a matter of tightening it up. These don't need to be cranked super tight. They just need to be held to the pins. And trust me, they're pain if you break them. So I'll get it on there, give it one little oomph, and I'm basically done. Now let's take a look at what happened up top. Take a look in there. That fluid all went back up in there. Now it's still not full yet because I haven't done this other side. But we'll see what happens when I get there. And that's basically brakes right there. That's all there is to it. That's front brakes. So I'll do the other side. I'll just roll right through it. I'll knock it out. I'll show you how much fluid ends up in here. Then I'll put it on and I'll show you the braking procedure. Now look how full that reservoir is. That reservoir is now pretty full. So I never ever rely on this to get my torque right. This will get the lugs on there. You could drive around probably with it, but I never am going to rely on that to make the torque, to set the torque on these lug nuts. You can check your torque specs. I normally go about $1.30. So I'll set the torque wrench. And then what I'll do is I'll go around in a 5-star pattern. So I'll get one going. That one's good. And I'll torque this one. That one's good. What I'll do is I'll drive it around. And then after you get like, call it 50, 100 miles on it, you want to torque it again. A lot of times these will come loose a little bit if they're not torque tight enough. Now lastly, when you're done with the torque wrench, always take the tension off. Good to go. And then I'll hit this again in a week. All right, so let's talk about brake bedding for a second here before I go doing it. So what is brake bedding? Essentially, it's what it is this. If you change the pads and the rotors, they don't have a surface that is conducive to stopping that well. So what you want to do when you bed the rotors, you want to heat these things up and kind of almost melt the pad material to the surface of the rotor. And that makes a better stop. Most of the time, this will happen naturally. And to be honest with you, if I went years and years and years without doing this, and likely never had a problem, but potentially had a problem. So when you're bedding rotors, what you want to do is you want to speed up to about 35 and give yourself a pretty good stop. You don't want to get to the anti-lock brakes stop, but you want to stop pretty hard. You want to come down to like 5 miles an hour. And then you repeat that procedure maybe 3 times. After you get that initial heat built up with those 3 accelerations and then decelerations to 5 miles an hour, then you increase it to 50. And you go 50 down to 5 pretty hard and do it again. At that point, you do that a couple times and then you try to get back to your house or someplace where you're parking fairly quickly without stopping. You kind of don't want those pads to glue themselves to the rotor. You want them to stay away from the rotor if it's possible. So I'm just going to show you this really quick. I'm on a side street where there's nothing. It's they're developing, they're building houses. This is a road that's not traveled too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my speed up to 35. Oh, got myself safe. And I'm up to 35, and then I'm going to brake kind of hard. Down to 5. Then I'm going to do it again. And that's basically it. You do that maybe 3 times, 4 times, and then you increase it to 50. Yeah, and that's it. Basically leave it sit for like an hour to cool off, and then you're good to go. Like I said, if you don't bed the brakes, it just kind of happens naturally anyhow. And it's not as important if you're not changing the pads and the rotors. There's already brake pad material built up on the rotors, so you're pretty much in good shape. Hope you learned something. Make sure you subscribe and share, whatever, all that stuff. I'm going to throw a link down in the description, and click that link. Help me out. So, okay, good deal, man. I hope you guys learned something. I will talk to you.